This is the second installment of the series on Shabbat, the fundamental mitzvah. Today the topic is going to be Erev Shabbat, the preparation for Shabbat. And as I will explain, the preparation of Shabbat is very important for the Shabbat itself. The rabbis say, Mishetarach be'erev Shabbat yochal be'Shabbat. A person who prepares well before Shabbat will be able to enjoy Shabbat, will be able to derive the benefits, eat the fruits of Shabbat. If a person doesn't prepare himself properly before Shabbat, the Shabbat cannot be the same category. The person needs to spend some time in preparing for Shabbat, and we will discuss what are these preparations. In the Gemara, there is an interesting concept in Zohar, in the Kabbalah, and that is that anything that we want it to happen on a sublime, divine inspiration must always start with something from the bottom. They call it an awakening from the bottom that brings in the awakening from the top. In other words, if you want to have light from heaven coming to illuminate you, you first have to start some fire from the bottom. The fire can even be the desire. It can be the prayer that something should happen. But whatever you want it to happen from the top has to come from the bottom, has to start from the bottom. It's a very important principle of philosophy of Kabbalah. It's called itareruta deletata. An awakening from the bottom is what precipitates a showering and radiation, a radiating of light from the top. So with that basis, with that preparation, let's start. First topic is Shabbat is considered to be like a bride. Lecha dodi likrat kala, we say on the poem of Rabbi Algaze on Friday night, let us go, you the bridegroom, go and welcome the bride. Who is the bridegroom? The people of Israel, Am Israel. Who is the bride? Shabbat. So before we have a union with Shabbat, we have to go to welcome it. We have to make enough effort. We have to go towards it. And that preparation of Erev Shabbat is the way we go towards it, how we prepare ourselves. And I'd like to discuss the preparations of Shabbat are always somehow, with a lot of running and a lot of rushing to prepare for Shabbat. Bialik, the famous poet, used to say, Yom HaShishi HaKatzar, the short Friday. When is a short Friday? In the winter is a short Friday. In the summer is not a long short Friday. It's a long day. No. Yom HaShishi is always Katzar. As we know, when we prepare Shabbat, every Friday is always short. We never make everything there isn't enough hours on Shabbat, on Erev Shabbat to prepare. We're always running. And that running is actually a good thing. We're moving. We want to make sure that Shabbat has everything that we can, the best food, the best drinks, the best clothes, the best tablecloth, the best crystal. There is an interesting Gemara that discusses a problem of damages. The Gemara says, if two people are walking in the street and one hits the other by mistake and they're both walking, there's no damage because both of them are walking in the same direction, in the same speed. And if they trip with one another, it's an accident. Nobody has to pay anything. However, if one of them is running in the street and the other one is walking, and in the clash, the one who's running has to pay all the damages because people don't run in the street. You have to be careful. The street is not for running. It's not a race course. It's a place for people to be careful. So if you're careless and you don't pay attention, you run into somebody, you have to pay. The Gemara says there's an exception. If a person is running on Shabbat, Erev Shabbat, on Friday, and you hit somebody in the street, you don't have to pay for the damages. And the Gemara explains that during the week, the difference is during the week, people are supposed to walk slowly. Running is not normal. But on Shabbat, on Friday afternoon, it's normal to run. So what? If you're going slow when everybody else is running, then it's your fault. You have to be careful. Normal, then a normal Friday is a day place of running. So essentially, we see here that on Friday afternoon, everybody's moving around, moving fast. It's normal for people to do that. And the beautiful thing is that the Jewish people are going to welcome the Shabbat. And if we look at the Jewish people as a bridegroom, even more so, a bridegroom is supposed to go towards a bride, to pick her up, to bring her in. And this idea that the Shabbat is like a bride is, of course, in the Lachadodi. It's also in the Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs that we say Friday afternoon. The whole idea of the Song of Songs is precisely the union of two people who at times they're not meeting and now they want to meet. The story of the Song of Songs, as you remember, is the story of a bridegroom who wants to go to see the bride, and the bride is busy and she doesn't seem to be interested in running towards the bridegroom. And then the bridegroom moves away and she runs and she realizes that he went away, and she goes out and tries to look for him. It's a constant search, the bridegroom for the bride and the bride for the bridegroom. And in a way, that's what we happen on Shabbat. Friday afternoon is the time that we are looking for Hashem. We are searching for him. And that's what the Shir HaShirim is a very important song, because it reflects the burning love relationship that exists between Hashem and the people of Israel, his beloved people. So on Friday afternoon, imagine it's the day before the wedding, or the afternoon before the wedding. Can you imagine how people are running, the excitement? And that is for the purpose of a union between Am Yisrael and the Shabbat. In reality, the whole week we are preparing for Shabbat. In some way, as you know, there was a Rabbi, Shammai, who used to, everything that he saw during the week, if he saw a beautiful piece of meat, he would say, this piece of meat is for Shabbat. If he saw a beautiful drink, beautiful liquor, he would say, this I'm going to put it for Shabbat. So the whole week, he was preparing himself for Shabbat. In fact, the word V'shamru b'nei said the Shabbat, which means that the children of Israel shall observe the Shabbat, is not understood as the word they will observe, but it should be understood that the word Shamar, the Or HaChaim says, the word Shamar means to expect, to anticipate, to wait for the time that it will come in. So V'shamru b'nei said the Shabbat doesn't mean they will observe the Shabbat. It means that during the week we're anticipating, when is Shabbat coming? What are we going to do for Shabbat? What are we going to eat for Shabbat? What are we going to drink? The whole time. So this is the preparation for Shabbat. It's interesting that as we will discuss in greater detail another time, the whole creation is waiting for Shabbat. 6 days Hashem created the world, but what do you do on the seventh day? Seventh day, you get a Shabbat. Shabbat is a form of creation. Hashem created Shabbat. That's what we will explain in later Sichot. Without Shabbat, the world itself would not have existence. The world needs Shabbat to make it, to give it significance. We don't run all week long just to work. We work because we need to work. But Shabbat is ultimately the reason we exist in the world. We have to work and operate in the world, but without Shabbat, our work would lack that main meaning. And so the rabbis say that Shabbat is the bride, and they compare it. Imagine that you have a party, a wedding party, and you have the caterer, you have the music, you have the guests, and everything is ready, and one thing is missing, the bride. What kind of a wedding party would be without the bride? The same thing is with us. The world, Hashem prepared a world, created people, created nature, created a lot of events, but without Shabbat, it would be like missing the bride at a wedding party. So that's the first thing about the preparation for Shabbat. The anticipation, the preparation, the setting aside things on Shabbat. I want to talk now about the second part. There's a rabbi who says, Hananiah Omer, Chayav Adam lemashmesh begadav Erev Shabbat. That a person on Friday should always check his pockets, all his pockets. Why? Because a person is not allowed to carry anything outside of his house on Shabbat unless there is an Eruv, a place that the feature that permits a person to carry something from a private home into a public area, or vice versa, is the Eruv. If there is no Eruv, you're not allowed to. So if you have something in your pocket and you carry it, you are transgressing a law. So the proper attitude is you should check your pocket to make sure there's nothing in the pocket. You don't take it by mistake. And so Rav Yosef says this is a paramount law of Shabbat. I want to explain a little bit, what is it so important that Rav Yosef says is a paramount law? On the one level, of course, we have to understand that we are not allowed to carry. And it's important to be careful not to carry something on Shabbat. But I want to suggest that there is also something deeper in the concept of examine the pockets of your clothing before start Shabbat. That means you have to examine your attitude, the worries that you had during the week. You have to realize, during the week we sometimes are drowning in a sea of desires, unfulfilled wishes, plans that don't come to fruition. On Friday we say a special psalm, Hashem Malach Yehud Lavesh. That psalm that we say on Friday says, Mikolod Maim Ravim, Adirim Mishberei Yam. Greater than the voice of the waves that break in the ocean. Rabbis say that what is greater than the raging waves of the sea? Our worry, the voice of despair that sometimes have, the pain that we suffer during the week. So when we come on Shabbat, we are supposed to take these things out. Remove them don't bring in on Shabbat these worries, this pain. Appreciate what a beautiful thing it is that you have a day in which you can get rid not only of the things in your pocket, but the things in your heart. Now we have Shabbat. Shabbat is a salvation for us. So we have to see it as if we were drowning in the water. And the rabbi said, imagine a person who's drowning in the water, and the captain of the boat sees a person drowning. He throws him a lifeline, and he says to him, grab hold of this line with your hand. Do not let it go, because if you do, if you don't, if you let it go, you will not live. Shabbat is a lifeline. And part of it is we have to see it as that. So before we enter Shabbat, check your garments, check your worries, take them out. Take our feeling that we are drowning, that we are crying to Hashem, and welcome the Shabbat. And here we come to an interesting point. How can we do that? How can we move away from our concerns? How is it possible that it comes Friday afternoon and all my problems are gone? All my issues are gone? And I'm going to give you a beautiful insight. It says in the Torah, "Shesh yamim ta'avod v'yasita kol melachtecha." 6 days you shall work and do all your work. And on the 7th day you shall rest. So rabbis asked the question, why does the Torah say, "Asita kol melachtecha"? You will do all your work. Can anybody do all the work on 6 days? After Shabbat, you have to go back to work, to the office. You have to go to your business. How can you do all your work? You finish whatever you have to do, but then you're going to resume it on the week after Shabbat. That's the secret. On Shabbat, you have to think, I have finished all the work. There's nothing more to do. When we go on vacation, whether it's a short or long one, we always carry with us. Some people actually carry their own computer, laptops. They make phone calls. They keep working. There's no vacation. But even in the best of circumstances, where people actually do go on vacation, they still, in their mind, something bothers them. Something. What are they going to do? The business is carries with them in the mind. On Shabbat, we have to figure that there's no more Sunday. Maybe one of the suggestions that I have is pretend on Shabbat, Mashiach will come. Whatever is in your office, it will not happen. Whatever contract will not happen. Whatever business you have to do, whatever stock, it's all finished. Shabbat is coming. The world is coming to an end. And that's the way a person should act on Shabbat. Not bring in, not carry through all the words of his word. Ki'ilu kol melachtecha asuya. That's what the rabbis say. You have to think as if all your work has been done. That's what it says, "V'asita kol melachtecha." You will do all your work. Pretend, think, figure that the whole work is done. So on Shabbat, we have something called peace of mind. Something that is very difficult to conceive in our world. Real peace of mind. The mind is at ease. A person who really does these preparations that I'm talking about now can have a real peace on Shabbat and be able to enjoy Shabbat in a very beautiful way. I want to address what happens if we didn't do all these things. I'm suggesting wonderful thing. We're going to prepare for Shabbat, prepare the food, take what our worries, finish your work as if nothing, all these things are not, haven't been able, as if there's no more business. Okay. So if you follow all the suggestions that I made, of course Shabbat is going to be beautiful. But let's be honest. What if you can't? What if it's difficult? How will you enjoy Shabbat? So listen, today I'm talking about two separate stages. One is before Shabbat, and one is Shabbat itself. Before Shabbat is one period, but on Shabbat is another. Let me explain. There's a beautiful parable. There was a soldier who was entrusted to be a sentry, a guard, to welcome the king. He was coming on a special visit. And this sentry did not know when the king was coming. Waited hours after hours after hours. It was a very hot day. He didn't know when the king was going to come. So he figured it took so long, maybe he can take a little break. takes off his uniform, runs to the river, gets a little refresh. And at that moment, he hears the trumpets. The king is coming. What is he going to do? He put away his uniform. All he has is his underwear and some quick garment that he's going to put together. How is he going to welcome the king in this form? He's not attired correctly for this. But nevertheless, he says, I have to welcome the king. It's my duty. So he runs into the area where the king is going to come and stands there. His uniform is disheveled a little bit. Maybe his hair is not properly combed. And the king comes and sees all the people, but he points out at this man. He turns out to the soldier with a very benign, kind smile and says, I must have caught you at a time that you were not perfectly ready. But I want to congratulate you that even though you are not perfectly prepared, you came to stand where you're supposed to stand. And for this, I admire you. This parable is similar to what happens on Shabbat. Even though we are not perfectly prepared, even if the house is not perfect, because we did the best we can, but it's not as perfect. When Shabbat comes, it's like that benign, kind king who understands that if we are there, even if it's imperfect, he admires us, and he loves us, and he's there with us. And that, I think, is what I want to explain. The difference between Erev Shabbat. Before Shabbat, we have to make every effort. We are the ones who make the effort. We are the ones who prepare ourselves. And part of the enjoyment of Shabbat is the result of what we do on Friday. That work that we do on Friday is what is going to make the Shabbat enjoyable and meaningful. Because we're going to be able to enjoy what we have done, the food, the peace, the removal of our worry. All of these things that we prepare are going to make an effect on Shabbat. But there is another part that has nothing to do with us. It's with Shabbat itself. If we stand in the place where we're supposed to be, even when our attire is not perfect, even when our preparation was not perfect, like that soldier, that we're a little disheveled, the Shabbat, like a benign king, that gives us the peace by itself. It does not only depends on us. The peace of Shabbat comes by itself. And there is one fundamental thing that we do on Shabbat. Simple. When a person stops working, he's saying there is a creator in the world. There's a guiding hand, a divine presence that is every time, all the time with us. It's a very simple sense of respect. Just like the soldier respected the king by simply being in that position. We are actually saying there is a God in the world. However imperfect we are, however disheveled we appear, or unprepared, just because we are in front of Shabbat, Hashem is happy with us. And as they say, Ladat ki ani Hashem. The purpose of Shabbat is that the world and you and us should know there is a God in the world. That's the whole purpose of Shabbat. And we can do it with all our effort, but even if we don't have all the effort perfectly done, the fact that Shabbat comes brings its own glory. So let me review. This shiur is about Erev Shabbat. The idea is that we are going to enjoy Shabbat to some extent, according to the preparation that we put into it. As the Rabbi said, he who prepares on Shabbat prepares on Shabbat will enjoy Shabbat. And he who cannot prepare on Shabbat will not enjoy it. That what appears to be dependent on us. And we talked about the concept that we are uniting with Hashem, welcoming the bride. And that part of the great part of Shabbat, in addition to, is to prepare ourselves to remove the things from our pockets that we don't carry with us, the worries, the concerns. And finally, that we think that all of our work has been done, that we don't bring our business worries, our concerns into Shabbat. But ultimately, all of these things are, however important they are, they refer only to a weekend. But at the end, when Shabbat comes, we can no longer do anything about it. There's no more upon us. Just welcome the Shabbat. And the Shabbat itself will bring its holiness, will bring its peace, will bring its light. And sometimes maybe the best part of Shabbat is just to be able to have an open heart. Open your heart. Shabbat will come in. And the Shabbat will come into our lives, into our hearts, and bring us the light and peace that represents Shabbat. In the next few classes, we will discuss a little bit how Shabbat itself brings this light into our lives.